Freedom, our group here, we are concerned with civil rights violations against homeless people that are daily, habitual, institutional, and crappy, to say the least, not to mention life-threatening. Now, and the obvious one is the right to sleep somewhere, not anywhere and everywhere, but somewhere, legally, in Santa Cruz. And that doesn't exist, except for a very small number of people who have shelter, but that's like, as of April 15th, the so-called emergency shelter. It isn't even really emergency shelter because you can't get into it except by getting on a waiting list, is what it houses 46 people. That's the Pauley Loft at the homeless, what I call the Homeless Lack of Services Center, or perhaps more properly, the Homeless Lack of Shelter Center. So yeah, sleeping is one of the issues, the most obvious, because it produces the highest number of citations, harassments, even arrests. I don't know about the highest number of arrests, but certainly a number of them, as the city attempts to drive away poor and homeless people, blaming them for various problems ranging from looking unsightly downtown to dropping endless needles here and there, although there's no evidence that they are a particularly needle irresponsible group, to thefts, and there are certainly are thieves everywhere in every group, and I would think and I would hope that poor people would be more inclined to steal if they need to in order to survive than those who are in houses, those who are well-to-do. Not that I'm recommending theft as a way of life, but it's there are those who say property is theft. I mean, who am I to say nay?
No turning back, but I'd like. I know there's no turning back, but I'd like.
HUFF is concerned with that. We're concerned with tracking the institutions that are engaged in these essentially institutional hate crimes, and that is, it's a form of human rights violations, which if the UN were here, they wouldn't like it either, you know. And if we got foreign observers in here, they would, you know, we should probably get somebody in from Iran, you know, or North Korea to look over the situation and say, oh, look at this, or call Putin's man and have him come over and check out Santa Cruz for violations against homeless people, because they are regular, habitual, and always masked. Not always masked. As far as the bureaucracy goes, they're masked. They do not want you to believe that they're happening. They want you to believe that Santa Cruz is a compassionate community. In fact, some would say too compassionate. They want you to believe that all the rules downtown recently enacted that make everywhere but 5% of the sidewalks illegal to sit on is also a reasonable regulation of people, when in fact it is a thinly disguised privatization of the sidewalk, which is really what that's all about. And there's more, and you know, endlessly we can go on. But you know, those are some of the issues that HUFF has been taking up. We're generally fighting rearguard actions, like there's the Chronic Offenders Program, which is repeatedly announced by Wells Fargo bagman DA Bob Lee, and I say that because of his endless harassment of the Occupy activists from the Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Santa Cruz movement, still going to trial $150,000 later, in order to punish those other people who aren't going to trial, who occupied a building, the Wells Fargo's vacant and still vacant 75 River Street building. I was one of the Santa Cruz 11, but there's still 4 who are facing prosecution, facing felonies, facing 4 years in prison. Anyway, Lee has got a chronic offender program for homeless people. He would say it's for people who are chronically violating the law, but the laws that he's talking about have to do with open container, panhandling. He's claimed that it doesn't involve sleeping, and that could well be. But the original documentation that went to City Council a year ago to push this stuff and to create the so-called Public Safety Task Force, which I call the Public Hysteria Task Farce, was based upon Deputy Chief Steve Clark's iteration of a very high amount of police time and money being spent on homeless people and their citations and arrests. And the overwhelming majority of those was for sleeping. I've seen their documents. I finally got them to send them to me a year later, and that's just how that is. Now, presumably the most chronic offenders they're looking at now, I think there's 6 of them mentioned in the paper, are people who are arrested for various things, maybe some involving alcohol and drugs, the kind of thing that you or I or 95% of Santa Cruz could do in their homes without any kind of problem if we had walls to shield us in the ridiculous drug war that, is so abusive and so pervasive and so endless, and should be stopped by, or at least resisted by, Santa Cruz authorities, because it's supposed to be a progressive community, but isn't. Instead, people succumb to this right-wing riptide as it drags people, further and further into this medieval viewpoint. HUFF, however, resists this, and we say nay. That's what HUFF's about. Awesome. So come on down, join HUFF every Wednesday, 11 o'clock at the Sub Rosa, or call 423-HUFF, 423-4833, and you can get on the HUFF email list. You can be a part of this incredible situation, and we hope you will.